clean 1980s hatchback that once sold for pocket change can now cost more than the sports car everyone wanted back then. The same thing is happening to oddball coupes, forgotten sedans, turbo experiments, and cars people used to dismiss as unreliable, ugly, or just too ordinary to save. For years, these machines sat at the bottom of classified ads because collectors were chasing muscle cars, exotics, and obvious icons. But the market has started looking closer at the 1980s. Digital dashboards, wedge styling, pop-up headlights, homologation tricks, and turbocharged engines that captured a very specific moment in car history. The problem is that attention moves fast. Once buyers realize a car is rare, original examples disappear, prices jump, and the cheap ones are usually gone first. So today, we are looking at 20 forgotten 1980s cars that are finally getting respect before the wider market fully catches on. If you like spotting cars before the auction headlines find them, subscribe and ring the bell. This channel is built for the overlooked stuff, the strange trims, low production experiments, and everyday machines that quietly became rare while nobody was paying attention. And we are not starting with the obvious poster cars. We are kicking off with a machine that looked humble when new, but now tells you exactly why the 1980s are getting reappraised. The Porsche 914 spent years wearing the cruelest label in Stuttgart, the affordable Porsche, for people who could not reach a 911. That reputation ignored what made it special. Underneath, the 944 had serious engineering. Its front engine and rear transaxle gave it near perfect weight balance, and the wide arches made it look far tougher than the earlier 924. It was not just a badge exercise. It was a sharp, stable, usable sports car built with real Porsche intent. Now enthusiasts are finally judging it by how it drives. Clean, unmodified examples are climbing because the 944 delivers steering feel, balance, and mechanical honesty that modern cars often filter out. And if the 944 had to fight the 911's shadow, our next Porsche lived under it even longer. The 928 was not Porsche losing the plot. It was Porsche trying to redraw the map. Launched as a high-tech Grand Tourer, it had a front-mounted V8, a rear transaxle, advanced suspension, and a cabin built for real distance. Porsche even saw it as a possible successor to the 911, which made the comparison almost impossible to survive. The 928 was smoother, quieter, and more effortless than a traditional sports car. It could cross countries at high speed without punishing the driver, and its engineering was far more ambitious than its old reputation suggested. For years, that reputation kept prices surprisingly low. Now collectors are noticing the design, the V8 character, and the fact that Porsche never built anything quite like it again. Next comes another Grand Tourer, judged against a legend it was never meant to copy. The Jaguar XJ-S spent much of its life being punished for not being another E-Type. That was never a fair fight. The E-Type was a 60s icon. The XJ-S was a different kind of machine, built as a refined Grand Tourer with a long bonnet, flying buttress rear pillars, and serious road presence. Under that bonnet, the V12 gave it a smooth, expensive character that few rivals could match. It was not sharp in the way people expected from a Jaguar sports car, but it was calm, fast, and built for covering long distances with ease. For years, tidy XJ-S coupes looked like used car bargains. Now, the best examples are being reassessed for their design, rarity, and effortless engine. Next, a compact German saloon brings racing blood to the everyday driveway. The 5-16 was the serious side of the baby Benz, built when Mercedes wanted its compact saloon taken seriously on road and track. Its 4-cylinder engine was developed with Cosworth, using a 16-valve head that helped turn a conservative-looking Mercedes into a high-revving homologation special. The car's purpose was clear: support Mercedes in touring car racing, especially the brutal world of Deutsche Tourenwagen Meisterschaft competition. For years, it sat in the shadow of louder rivals, especially the BMW M3. It looked too subtle, and many used examples were simply treated as old compact sedans. Now collectors understand the formula: Cosworth engineering, racing pedigree, limited production character, and daily usability. Next comes another German machine, that was once just a cheap used car, but is now firmly in classic territory. The BMW E30 spent years as the cheap old 3 Series you bought, lowered, swapped, thrashed, or simply drove into the ground. That made sense at the time. It was compact, simple, and easy to work on, with clean styling and rear-wheel drive balance that made even ordinary versions feel alive. You did not need an M3 to understand the appeal. A basic 325i could deliver sharp steering, a light body, and the kind of mechanical connection modern cars often filter out. The problem is that so many were modified, rusted, or neglected that original cars became genuinely hard to find. Clean, unmolested E30s now bring serious money, especially with desirable engines, manual gearboxes, and factory-correct details. Next, we move to something far quirkier, but loved for equally strong reasons. The Saab 900 Turbo looked like it had been designed by engineers who ignored every trend in the room. It had that long nose, upright tail, and a wraparound windscreen that made the cabin feel more like an aircraft cockpit than a normal family car. Underneath, it was just as unusual, with front-wheel drive, clever packaging, and a turbocharged engine that delivered its power with real character. In the 1980s, that made it hard to compare with German sedans or Japanese coupes. The Saab was practical, quick, safe, and strange all at once, which meant many buyers admired it from a distance. Now, that oddness is the main attraction. A clean 900 Turbo feels distinctive in a way few modern cars do, and that brings us to another boxy, practical machine that somehow became cool. The Volvo 240 was the car people bought when they wanted the decision to be over. It was a square saloon or estate with huge glass, upright seats, a deep boot, and controls that felt built for winter gloves. Families used them for school runs, holidays, house moves, and everything in between, because the 240 made no attempt to be delicate. Its reputation came from durability and safety rather than speed. The engines were simple, the mechanical layout was honest, and the body structure helped make Volvo a byword for sensible protection. For years, that boxy shape made it invisible. Now it is the reason people notice it. The clean lines, steel wheels, and practical proportions feel refreshingly permanent. Next, we leave Swedish restraint behind for an Italian car with sharper edges and far more drama underneath. Alfa Romeo called it the 75, but in America it became the Milano, and underneath the sharp 80s wedge was a layout most sports saloons never got. The engine sat up front, while the gearbox and differential were mounted at the rear as a transaxle. That helped give the car unusual balance, and with rear-wheel drive, inboard rear brakes, and quick steering, it felt far more serious than its boxy shape suggested. The Busso V6 gave it the voice people remember. Smooth, metallic, and completely Italian. Even ordinary drives had that classic Alfa mix of charm, fragility, and mechanical theatre. For years it was ignored outside loyal Alfa circles. Now buyers are noticing how rare that engineering is, and the next Italian saloon hides something even stranger. Ferrari power in a family car. 32 looked like a sober executive saloon for people who did not want attention. Then you opened the bonnet and found a V8 related to the one in the Ferrari 308. Lancia reworked it for front-wheel drive, fitted a cross-plane crank, and tuned it for smoother delivery rather than supercar drama. The result was still extraordinary. A conservative four-door with Ferrari hardware, a manual gearbox, and enough performance to embarrass far flashier machinery. It even had a powered rear spoiler that rose from the boot lid, as if the car briefly forgot it was supposed to be discreet. Few were built, and many lived hard lives. Today, that mix of rarity, subtle looks, and unbelievable engine story is exactly why collectors are paying attention. Next comes another Italian badge with an even bigger reputation to repair. The Maserati Biturbo spent decades as a warning label with leather seats. Early cars were cheap to buy, expensive to fix, and often neglected by owners who underestimated what a twin-turbo Italian coupe demanded. That reputation was not invented, but it also buried the car's real appeal. A properly sorted Biturbo has sharp Giugiaro-era lines, a rich cabin, and a turbocharged V6 that gives it genuine Maserati character instead of mere badge value. It was flawed, but it was ambitious. Younger collectors are now learning to separate tired examples from cars that have been maintained, upgraded, and understood. The bad ones are still risky. The good ones finally make sense. And after this Italian troublemaker, the second half shifts into Japanese wedges, hot hatches, and sleepers that are only now getting their due. We are halfway through the list, and the next 10 cars get even more interesting. If you are enjoying these overlooked 1980s machines, hit the like button and subscribe. It helps more enthusiasts find the channel, and I genuinely appreciate it. Coming up, we have fast-rising Japanese classics, European oddballs, and a few cars that still look underpriced today. The first generation Toyota MR2 gave buyers something exotic in a very practical package, a featherweight mid-engined sports car with Toyota running costs. The AW11 was small, sharp, and honest. Its wedge-shaped body looked futuristic. The engine sat behind the seats, and the chassis made ordinary roads feel special without needing huge speed. It was the kind of car that rewarded precision, not bravery. That is why collectors have finally caught on. Clean, early MR2s are no longer the cheap backroad secret they were 10 years ago, especially unmodified cars with good interiors and no rust. The appeal is simple: mid-engine balance, approachable money, and everyday Toyota reliability. And that brings us to another small Japanese performance car that is becoming harder to find unspoiled. The Honda CRX took the small car idea and made it feel engineered, not cheap. It weighed very little, had a low seating position, and used Honda's rev-happy 4-cylinder engines to make modest power feel alive. The Psy models were especially sharp, with crisp steering, eager throttle response, and a chassis that encouraged carrying speed instead of relying on horsepower. Its packaging was classic Honda: 2 seats, a usable hatch area, great visibility, and impressive fuel economy made it practical enough to daily drive while still feeling special on a back road. That everyday usability is exactly why clean CRXs are scarce now. Many were modified, raced, wrecked, rusted, or simply used up. Today, an unspoiled CRX shows how much fun simplicity can deliver. Next, the formula gets stranger, faster, and far more rotary. Mazda took a real risk with the second generation RX-7 because the FC kept the rotary engine at a time when many buyers worried about apex seals, fuel economy, and specialist maintenance. That fear hid how good the car was. The FC had near perfect balance, a low hood, clean proportions, and steering that made it feel built around the driver. Turbo models added real speed, but even the naturally aspirated cars rewarded smooth inputs and momentum. For years, the rotary reputation kept prices low and pushed many examples into cheap project territory. Now, that same engine has become part of the appeal, especially as enthusiasts look for distinctive 1980s sports cars with character. Values are rising, clean cars are disappearing, and the FC finally looks like the smart buy it always was. Next comes another Japanese coupe, remembered mostly as the older sibling of a legend. The Z31 300ZX lived in the shadow of the later Z32, which arrived with smoother styling, bigger performance, and instant poster car status. That made the earlier car look dated for years, even though its sharp edges are exactly what make it interesting now. This was Nissan doing a Grand Tourer with full 1980s confidence, long hood, wedge profile, pop-up headlights, available turbocharged V6 power, and in some trims, a digital dashboard that feels like it came from a sci-fi arcade cabinet. It was more relaxed than a pure sports car, but it had real pace and a strong highway personality. Clean Z31s are now being reappraised because they capture the decade without apology, and that sets up another turbocharged Japanese wedge with even more video game energy. The Mitsubishi Starion looked like it had been widened by someone who loved Group B rally cars. It had a blunt wedge nose, pop-up headlights, a low roofline, and on later wide-body versions, flared arches that made the whole car look planted before it even moved. Under the hood, turbocharged 4-cylinder power gave it the kind of boost-heavy, mechanical personality that modern performance cars have mostly polished away. But for years, the Starion sat behind bigger names like the Supra, RX-7 and 300ZX, partly because Mitsubishi never built the same sports car mythology around it. That is changing. Collectors are starting to value its analog turbo feel, rear-wheel drive layout and unmistakable stance. And from here, the trail gets stranger, with a Japanese coupe shaped by Giorgetto Giugiaro himself. The Isuzu Piazza was not just another forgotten Japanese coupe. Its shape came from Giorgetto Giugiaro, the same designer tied to icons like the Lotus Esprit and Volkswagen Golf, and it showed in the proportions: long glass, a sharp nose, slim pillars, and a cabin pushed into a futuristic wedge. On paper, it had the right ingredients, especially in turbocharged form, with rear-wheel drive and clean grand touring intent. The problem was the badge. Isuzu was respected for durable trucks and practical cars, not dream coupes, so the Piazza never gained the mythology that surrounded rivals from Toyota, Mazda, or Nissan. Now that obscurity is part of the appeal. Survivors are rare. The styling has aged into something genuinely distinctive, and the Giugiaro connection gives it design credibility collectors can explain in one sentence. Next comes a Ford that people laughed at when it arrived, even though its basic idea was years ahead of the market. Ford replaced the Cortina with the Sierra and made ordinary family car buyers feel like the future had arrived without asking permission. The old Cortina was square, familiar, and safe. The Sierra was rounded, smooth, and quickly mocked as the jelly mold because it looked nothing like the cars people expected to park outside their houses. That shape was not a gimmick. Ford chased aerodynamics hard, with flush glass, softened edges, and a hatchback profile that made many rivals look instantly dated. Early buyers were suspicious, but the market eventually moved toward exactly this kind of wind-cheating design. Today, tidy, standard Sierras have real period appeal, especially because so many were used up. The Cosworths are legends, but they deserve their own deep dive. Next, France made something even stranger. France answered with the Citroën CX, a car that looked less designed than launched. Its long nose, covered rear wheels, curved glass, and tapering tail gave it a space-age silhouette, while the cabin felt defiantly unfamiliar, with a single-spoke steering wheel, dashboard pods, and controls placed where only Citroën would put them. The real magic sat underneath. Its hydropneumatic suspension could level itself, shrug off rough roads, and glide with that famous magic carpet ride that made ordinary springs feel crude. It was not just soft, it was engineered weirdness with purpose. For years, that personality limited its appeal. Too odd, too complicated, too French. Now those same traits make the CX collectible. It is not loved despite being strange anymore. It is loved because it never tried to be normal. The Peugeot 205 GTI made performance feel simple again. It was small, light, and quick enough to turn a normal back road into an event, without demanding exotic car money or specialist courage. Its genius was not raw power, it was the way the whole car reacted. The steering was sharp, the chassis felt alive, and the compact size let drivers use every inch of the road. In the 1980s, that combination helped define what a hot hatch was supposed to be. Practical enough for weekdays, playful enough to embarrass bigger machinery on weekends. For years, many were modified, crashed, or simply used up. That is why clean, original examples now bring serious money. The cheap thrill became the benchmark. And next, the final car takes us into a very different kind of 1980s performance legend. The Buick Grand National looked like it had rolled out of a witness protection garage. Black paint, black trim, squared off bodywork, and almost no shouting. Just a Buick badge hiding something nasty under the hood. That something was a turbocharged V6, and in the right trim, it made the Grand National brutally quick for its time. At traffic lights, it could embarrass Corvettes, Camaros, and plenty of imported performance cars that looked far more serious. In the 1980s, not everyone understood it. A dark, turbo Buick did not fit the traditional muscle car script. Today, that is exactly why it matters. The Grand National proved performance did not need chrome, stripes, or a V8 soundtrack to become legendary. Sometimes the forgotten car becomes the one one everyone finally fears. The Grand National is a perfect place to end, because this whole list proves the same thing. The 80s were full of cars that looked ordinary, confused the market, or arrived before people knew what to do with them. Now collectors are looking again, and yesterday's oddballs are becoming tomorrow's classics. Thanks for watching. Which forgotten 1980s car would you rescue from obscurity, and which one did we miss? Drop your picks in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed the list, and keep watching for more overlooked machines finally getting their due.